So, welcome everyone. Hello, dear feministas. Welcome to the Despise Girls. Let's talk economic justice. So, you might be wondering why I'm all alone here. Well, because let me see. Where is Emilia? Probably in another conference call talking about financing for development, women's human rights, gender equality, and probably bashing some of those institutions of global governance that really doesn't do their job well in terms of upholding our vision for system change. So that's it. But she'll be coming in a little while. And unfortunately, Rina is not feeling very well today. And of course, we did not want to push it. Self care is important. We understand that, times are very difficult right now and it's taking a toll on everyone. So we just want to assure Rina, we got your back. The show will go on, and we're bringing our dear friend Sanam to come with us and be part of our discussion tonight on Decolonial Dream. So, yay! Thank you very much, Sanam, for being a real trooper.
Thank you for inviting me, Tet Tet. This is the best. Oh my God, and Amelia's already here.
I was
Hey,
complaining why you were gonna be late.
I'm sorry, but just in time for the to sing our stars here.
Yes.
Sana, you're like the madrina of the Spice Girls show. You're our first guest, and definitely your spirit is always with us.
Yes,
So
and I
I
want
think
to also take credit that I was the one who said last year that you should do this. You should have a
exactly.
podcast or a live conversation.
Yes,
How
you
exciting would
are a
it be?
despised girl.
You are a Spice Girl, and actually, we were thinking that you are the best to bring your spirit really to help us emphasize what we've been shy in the past. It was your idea, and now we're all full on in doing this. So this is really great in having you here, and hopefully the people is also admiring our guest. And if this is the first time you're here listening to her, you don't want to miss a word that she's saying. And if you know her already, we also want to know where we can follow her on her social media and her projects coming, because she's really doing amazing things all over the world. So welcome, and I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. It would only be better if we could be in person, but
Yeah,
until
I
that moment,
know.
we have to have our conversations this way.
Do you want to tell us where are you based on and what you're doing now?
Okay. So
What's keeping
I
you
am
busy?
Yes, what's
What's
keeping you
my
busy?
my main project that I'm doing is my PhD, because it is part of my grand plan to become a recognizable expert on certain issues so that I can do more work
Doctor!
as part of this praxis of changing the world for the better that I know that we're definitely all committed to. And I guess the academic part is where I have some connections to our topic today, because my very first degree is where I did my sort of theory level education on post-colonial theory, on Western texts and empire, and as well as, of course, feminist theory and all of that. That's where I read my Fanon, I read Said, and Chandra Taupade Mohanty, and all of those amazing writers that really helped us formulate some of the language and thinking when it comes to this subject. So,
But of
there was.
course, it's not just all about the academia, Sanam. You're
Mm,
selling yourself short, no? I've known Sanam for quite some time now, and she is hardcore activist. You know, down imperialism.
Totally.
absolutely,
That is
absolutely.
the Sanam I know when we worked together last year in putting up the women's global strike. You know, when you didn't bring your fancy sign. No, when women stop, the world stops. Sanam was one of the driving force behind that global campaign that really talked about. Okay, Sanam, what did we talk about in the women's global strike?
Oh my God, we talked about addressing all kinds of inequality and injustice, the patriarchy, but also, one of the things that I thought was so amazing in our poster, you could see that we were saying no occupation. And, we saw that intersectional sort of approach in our feminism, in our work for social justice. And yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying it's only academic. I'm saying that the thinking started there, and then it becomes a burning fire in you that you don't just read and learn about it, you act on it because you see how the world is shaped by it, and you feel that okay, this is what we need to do. Yeah, I'm very flattered that you refer to me as so hardcore, but both of you are pretty hardcore as well. And I think this is a very sort of polite, nice way of joining with us. I think the best way to witness what we're like is when we're on the streets marching and we have our megaphones.
That's true.
And we're calling out, imperialismo.
Yeah, or the other side of us is really attending negotiations, and we have a very sharp tongue for interventions or even for calling out member states, and that's not everybody does that. I mean, and perhaps there's also a different way. Not everybody needs to be straight to cut into the reality immediately. Some people may want to do it with a softer hand. I think all of us are more like a straightaway. Well, I need to say that Sanam is more graceful. Rina is more. Yeah, Rina is more gentle, and she always has this nice sense of humor. So everybody loves Rina. That makes you laugh, and I'm just brutal, and But I think there are degrees amongst ourselves in our technical activism, because what we're saying here is that for doing global in the way that we have been doing, there is also that technical aspect as well. But all of us are very rigorous in what we say, what we do, the figures, and that's also a different dimension of our activism overall. Or I don't know what you think.
I guess we have our different elemental approaches, but there are moments where I think, Emilia, I count on you to be like, we have to be this angry.
Yeah,
Like I remember a few years
I'm always there
back
for that.
where we had this awful sort of moment where at the UN headquarters in New York, where the there's a whole security circus around it. And the idea is that if you have a temporary pass and you're in the building, you're allowed to stay in as long as the meeting is going. You can't get kicked out. And there was an episode where people got kicked out, but it so happened that one or two officials tried to intervene and tried to sort it out, right? And the next day, the people who had been kicked out were just like, well, maybe we should thank that person. And I was just like, no, because you got kicked out anyway. Like, so what if that person was trying to intervene and be nice? Security still kicked us out, and that is a problem. So unless they actually stop that and make sure that we are in the space when decisions are being made, then I don't see what we're thanking them for.
Exactly.
See what I mean when I said Sanam was hardcore? And we
Yeah.
haven't even started really. No, we're just catching up. This is just a nice getting to know you hello session of our episode
Yes.
tonight. So
Yeah.
Sanam, we're really happy that you managed to make time, no, for this discussion tonight, because we are going to talk about our decolonial dream. Okay, so people
Yeah.
might be wondering, this is already 2021. Why are we still talking about colonialism? What is this decolonial dream that we are talking about? Is it still here? Has it never left? You know, many questions. So maybe we can start off with that, and yeah, I'm sure this is gonna be a very heated and fiery discussion.
Fire
Woo!
away,
For
Sanam.
sure. For
Yeah,
sure. I mean, the first question of why are we still talking about it? I think it's interesting to have this conversation at this moment because the first things that come to mind for me is as we have this conversation, we're in this global pandemic. And the conversation around fixing it will be over by next year. Last year we thought everything's going to be back to normal in 2021, and now we're talking about 2022 in the same way. But let's backtrack and just remember that the vaccine was supposed to be the magic bullet. And
exactly.
and given that that was supposed to be the magic bullet, and we are 7 billion people in the world, it's an easily transmissible virus that quickly spread around the world. We knew the bad situation that we are in. We knew that a whole bunch of pharmaceutical companies and scientists were working really hard to find a solution. And I'm not going to delve into the hocus pocus of like can we trust this technology or not. I think those of us who are here, we can be in agreement that just the mRNA technology that people doubt so much, this is coming from years of HIV research.
Yeah.
So like I'm not getting into the doubt part of it, but let's accept that once we knew that we had these vaccines that had such a high efficacy rate and could potentially get us out of this crisis, why were we just were Europe and America just sort of booking their own stocks and sort of negotiating for the amount themselves? Is this the kind of response that you want to see to a global pandemic? Public health doesn't care about borders. And yet here, in the face of this global crisis, these are the same territories that claim responsibility for the global order, that say that we are the ones that can be trusted with nuclear weapons, not the North Korea. We are the ones who are going to take care of things. You can trust us. The EU props itself forward as a defender of human rights. So much self patting on the back that we are there for human rights defenders. We stand up for human rights and all of that. If you really believe in human rights, I think you're missing the part of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights about right to health. And if you actually cared about that, then what you should have done at the very beginning is said that, okay, we cannot just talk about a few million vaccine for France and for Belgium and wherever has the highest amounts of cases right now. This is a disease that we know now is going to affect the whole wider world. Why did you not, back in December 2020, say that, well, we definitely need however many billion doses of vaccine, and we're going to figure out as G7, as G20, whatever you want, how we're going to pay for that. And pharmaceutical companies need to figure out how to also deliver on that, whether you produce it yourself or you license and go around and produce it with other companies in different parts of the world. That's how to do it. If they wanted to avoid the conversation around the TRIPS waiver and the demand for sharing intellectual property on the vaccines, they could have done that. So you see, this is imperialism, but it's bad imperialism. Just to say that you could have done it better to circumvent this whole conversation. So already when we talk about vaccines, we see the old patterns of imperialism coming back, where the EU and America are sitting on so much vaccine that they're talking about giving booster shots for themselves when the rest of the world is going through, more waves. And it's just, like I said, a complete lack of understanding on how public health works. If we had moved fast in the first 6 months of 2020 and given out as much supply of vaccine worldwide as possible, then we might not have seen as many variants, because this is not, people misunderstand. Yeah. People think that I have one vaccine, therefore this is shielded, I will be protected. That's not how it works. What you're doing is you're giving it as many as possible so that the virus doesn't have a chance to travel and mutate.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then when you look at that and you think about the borders and the territories, that's when you start to rethink that what is going on.
They're doing a bunker. They're doing a bunker. It's like the wealthy are just getting themselves like a fictional bunker that is just built out of their immunity, and they're kicking the rest of the world out.
Yeah,
And they think
even
their
worse,
bunker
at
is
this
locked.
moment, they're like, oh, we're going to donate these vaccines to these poor countries. I'm just like, really? Because you could have also let us produce it. But
But
this is not
actually,
donation.
and the disgusting thing about the donation is that the due expiration date is so fastly coming that in Africa, for
Exactly.
instance, it's just from 15 days and giving them 30 days of expiration. So there is no way any country would have the
Mm-mm.
capacity to expand the vaccination policies just as fast. Not to mention the 60 millions of vaccines that were already destroyed in the US just because the expiration date came and they were just hoarding the vaccines. But now, especially Africa, is now seeing the challenge on how are we going to disperse all of these vaccines in just 15 or 20 days. It's impossible. No country can do that. And it's really disgusting because it's just the waste that they're sharing. And it goes back again to the imperialism. I think what we're trying to make the point here is that colonialism and imperialism is alive and kicking, and it's
Absolutely.
some people are saying hyper colonialism, or others are saying imperialism or coloniality in steroids, because it's now up to a level that has never been seen in the world before. Not even when the colonizer were taking on the territories, let us say, fighting in person. This is a new level of colonialism and imperialism.
I'd like
For
to pick up
sure.
on that point, Emilia, no? Because our notion of colonialism, it's like in the medieval times, when they arrive in big ships and just really conquer, so much like what the Spaniards did to the Philippines and to the rest of the world in search of spices, and then they used religion, Catholicism, in order to subjugate the people. So that is the direct conquest. No, there are wars, but now it has also mutated. Colonialism, imperialism has mutated
The
also.
virus mutated.
Yes, you don't even need that open shooting war anymore in order to take control not just of one country but of
but
the
you
entire
know,
world.
the shooting part still matters,
It
right?
still
Because
happens.
It
Yeah.
still
one
happens.
aspect of colonialism that I see alive today, like I said, think about the word territories. Why is the US there in ECLAC and ESCAP?
Get
And
out of there! Get out
yeah,
of
the
there!
Regional Commission for Asia and the Pacific has as member states France, United Kingdom, United States, because they have territories. And if people want, they can look up the map of U.S. military bases around the world. So you're right. There maybe the imagery may not be direct of war, but they are very much with the guns to our throats. The U.S. military has 800 military bases around the world. The
Well,
United Kingdom has 145 military bases around the world. Like, you best believe that they're still on some level maintaining their power through the threat of military violence. But absolutely, it's evolved now. It's mutated to much more about the economic and political power through treaties, through sitting, as I said, in the regional commission and having votes on things that they're not actually part of that region. How is it fair that the US is present in like 3 different regions and getting a say on every region as well as on the global level? That's just ridiculous.
yeah,
Let's
and I
pause
want to say,
first a bit. I want to share this little piece of info that I got. I was speaking with another woman from Malawi a few hours ago, and we were also talking about the vaccines. So I asked her, how's the situation in Malawi? So she said, it's getting better now that it's no longer winter. So I'm not sure how scientific, it is, but she said that it's they're hopeful that because it's going to be hotter, the situation around the virus will not be as bad. So, and then she told me that only around 90,000 vaccines have been delivered in Malawi. So I was like, 90,000 vaccines for a
Nothing.
whole country.
Nothing.
It's like, what on earth? It's really, the inequality. In the US, they're talking about having booster shots already. But in many parts of the global south, where our people live, where we live, people do not even have access to one vaccine shot, proper medical supplies. So that is really inequality at its at the very core, no?
Yeah,
Okay, you
definitely.
can go back.
Well, I just wanted to share. I was just in a meeting with on a South Cooperation, and what what was mentioned by Butch Montes is that all of those global North countries that say, "Oh, we are protectors of gender equality, women's rights, and we are the most advanced." And he said, "Yeah, but they're also the ones who are benefiting the most from the debt crisis because they're getting all of the interest rates paid by the southern countries, especially the poorest countries. They're the ones receiving." With the paradise fiscal havens, all of the money that is flying from the global south to the global north, they are the ones benefiting from the intellectual property rights, and therefore with the sharing of the vaccines. And then he started to mention all of these, and he said the global north countries are the countries that are exploiting the women the most. And I was like,
Absolutely.
it's like mathematics, so the dear audience, if you recall last session, we were sharing the diagram of unpaid domestic and care work in the weather report, and how women are really subsidizing the economy. And the second layer of structural division of labor is the geographic division of labor, and how the north is really extracting all of the value of the global south. So you have the best equation of exploitation. And I really, really like to emphasize that the global north is the major exploiter of women's rights in the world. In the world. And it is not a cultural battle, it is an economic, materialistic, and actual factual exploitation. Let us not add the planetary crisis in which we're on all in, precisely because of the profiting of the destruction of the planet at this moment in time. So I'm really calling it's crime against humanity and ecocide, and we really need to start filing lawsuits against them. So if anybody is out there who's a lawyer, please help me start a coalition on strategic litigation against all of those countries. Reach out to me. I'm really starting it. I just can't see those
Mm.
crimes anymore.
And I want to illustrate what you're saying of the scale of exploitation and the scale of crime. But think about it through, for example, one object. All right. So, for example, let's think about this T-shirt. Let's start from the beginning. Cotton. And if you're interested in this, there's lots of great books about capitalism and colonialism, as well as global north, global south, sort of supply chain stuff. But let's start with cotton. First, we produce the cotton. Who produces it? Where is it produced? What does it mean? And cotton production is still in the plantations of centuries ago. It's happening in the United States, and what folks that are familiar with the abolition conversation may know is that the exception that they made for slavery, that slavery can never happen, forced labor can never happen except for prisoners. So you have prison labor in the United States still maintaining the colonial cotton plantations from centuries ago. You
Wow.
think that it's in the past? It's not. It's still currently where cotton is being produced. It is also a problem for the environment because it uses a massive amount of water. Meanwhile, you have places like Flint, Michigan still without clean water. You have Nestle sitting in so many countries getting water for free and then refusing to
Oh yeah.
recognize the right to water. So you already, just in the production of cotton, you have a problem. Then take it to be woven into fabric. Take it to a global south country like mine, Bangladesh, where it's a massive textile factories are there. Which, by the way, they started moving there because of the multi-fiber agreement. Because global north countries did not want South Korea to dominate this sector so much. So South Korea tried to sort of train and move this industry to Bangladesh, where it is currently dominating. Here, you have exactly this exploitation that Emilia is talking about, where the garments factory workers are mostly poor women from all across the country. This is often for them the first sort of entry to formal workplace. I would never say that they're not working before. Of course, they're working before, as you've talked about in the last episode. Women are working all the time. It's just a question of are we recognizing it as work or not. So those textile factories, first of all, the fight to get minimum wage there is ridiculous, and it's been kept at a ridiculously low level because the industry does everything, including working with the government and with the security forces, to suppress protests, to shut down unionization, to arrest unionists, and so on and so forth. The garments association and factory owners have this pull with the government, despite the disasters that you know about in Bangladesh, because they're employing so many people and they're bringing so much growth to the economy. Creating jobs. Yes, exactly. You don't want to face suddenly losing all of these jobs, but there you go. And the structure within the factory, the supervisor level and higher, is mostly male. You have problems of sexual harassment and sexual violence. So here you have these hardworking, struggling women who barely get paid, who their pay is held back, by the way, all the time, and they still have to produce, because what if we lose this job? Now, then, this product that they've made, by the way, your Benettons and H&Ms and all of that, they don't supervise the factories themselves because that would be too distasteful, right? They come for inspection of the final goods and look at them and be like, oh, this one, the sewing is too crooked. Okay, we throw this to aside. And then it gets sold in the local market in Bangladesh where you get it cheaper. So there you go. That becomes another sort of access to this. But then the most part, this goes to all of these shopping outlets in the global north, the middle income countries around the world. And then, you try to blame people for buying fast fashion, but then it's also poor women who have to invest quite a bit to have a professional appearance, to participate in the formal workplace. And they cannot, there's the sort of idea of like, if you can invest $100 in a pair of shoes, that pair of shoes is going to last you 10 years. But most people don't have that cash on hand, and they would use it for something else. So you see, women are getting exploited from the south to the north, one product, as well as prisoners, as well as maintaining the same plantation structures from centuries ago. It shows you how alive our borders, our factories, our plantations are still using what was set up 200, 300, 400 years ago.
Yeah, no, and you're also highlighting an element that is very important. Is that imperialism and coloniality is as violent now as it was at the beginning, and perhaps the people think, oh, capitalism is so good because it brought. I heard this argument. It brought social protection. It brought health, education, and it's like, exactly, workers brought social protection. Workers also brought social security, the wages. All of that is a result of movements, of fights against capitalistic exploitation. So people have it all wrong, because all of the benefits of current society, it has been earned by people against the exploitation, because capitalism thrives on exploitation, on slavery, on low wages, etc. And it's actually the other, and actually it thrives on it thrives when the low quality of life is actually spread out. So it's insane, and people, I don't know how they don't see it. That you're back. We were talking about the secret of happiness and loving the world, and you missed it. Sorry about that.
Next time. Everything.
Sorry.
Third world problems. It's raining here. There's thunder and lightning, and then the light suddenly went out.
Well,
because of
It's
the
a huge
imperialists.
reminder though. Yeah, it's a huge reminder though, because whenever people say that, oh, internet is democracy, everybody can participate, it's just like, you do know that almost a billion people are living without electricity, and many of us are not even having regular electricity connection. Like, what
and
is
do
the
you
support?
know that the billionaires from the digital empires are making enough money to cover poverty, access to social protection, debt, and they're actually holding it? So did you know that as well? No, it's like it's just obscene. I just
Oh
don't have any
yeah,
word.
didn't you feel it was ridiculous when one of these awful people who went to space?
Bozo.
Bezos.
I don't
I
want to
call
say
him
it. I don't
Bozo.
want to say it. I don't want to say that. No.
Yeah,
He's like the
But
clown. He's
remember,
the
he
bozo.
did the
yeah.
press conference, and then he just like, I want to thank the Amazon workers and the Amazon customers because you made this possible. And I'm just like, yeah, they paid for this. They did not ask to pay for this.
I just want to go back to some of the points that we wanted to emphasize to say
Mm.
one, coloniality is alive and kicking. Two, we're talking about global north specifically. We are naming and shaming. But the third one is like, what about IFIs? What about
Mm.
international financial institutions that are or OECD or the G20 or the G7 or even the World Trade Organization and the UN? What can we say about those places enabling colonial dynamics at this moment in time? What can you say?
Let me talk
I
about the
would say
OECD. It's the Rich Boys
IMF
Club,
and
no?
World Bank to start with. You know, did people know that there's a tradition of who gets to be president? And it's never somebody from the global south. This is an unwritten tradition that has been maintained.
Can you repeat the idea? I don't think I got it.
The IMF and the World Bank
Yeah,
presidents are
yeah.
always, one is
Oh, yeah, from
European,
the
one
global
is
south. No,
American.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
No,
Of
it's
course. How can somebody from a poor country who asks for loans, who asks for money, be the president of a big international institution that lends money? No, it's
yeah, because
unthinkable.
we're not saying that the global south is perfect or there are not people in the global south enabling imperialism and colonialism, but the ones who are really benefiting are those who are living in the global north and those who are serving the global north. So I think you're making a great point in also uh, using the name of white people, of black people or people from the global south, and saying, oh look, we have a black person there, which is only tokenism, and the serving that they're doing is really to the interest of the powerful people. So I think you're
You're
making
talking
a
about the
great
World
point.
Trade Organization also, Emilia. The current head of the World Trade
That's
Organization
true.
is a woman from
Yeah,
Africa,
yeah.
and talking about how the rules of the game could be used to support pandemic recovery. It was like I almost fell off my chair. It's
Yes.
like, what? What have they done to you, my sister? Why have you allowed yourself to be instrumentalized by the
Who
very
hurt you that
institutions
badly?
that cause so much poverty and misery in our countries? You know,
Yeah.
it's like this is really so mucked up, but I'm also going to share with you a little bit about the other hat that I used to wear, um a civil society engaging with the Rich Boys Club, providing official development assistance, no, or foreign aid. They look at it as as something from the goodness of their heart, recognizing that the current levels of development in rich countries is owed in part to the debt that they owe to the third world. That's why now that they're rich, they won't forget their poor brothers and sisters and allocate, supposedly they will allocate 0.7% of their national incomes to help those needy neighbors, no? But it's been more than 20 years ago since they made that promise. They haven't kept it, and so we're still talking about 0.7% of your gross national income as official development assistance or aid. They haven't kept that promise, and now they're saying it's because we have our own problems. You know, times are hard. Even we may be rich, but we're also experiencing some
We're stealing from our
Rich
own poor
also
people
cry.
also.
boo hoo hoo.
Yeah, so we can feel free. Actually, there is some data for every dollar that comes to the global south in official development assistance. $80 come out for illicit financial flows. So it's 180. That's the ratio. But the other thing I also wanted to say is at this moment, we've seen in the climate negotiations, we've seen in energy negotiations on every way in UNCTAD, Financing for Development, that whenever the global South countries are really rallying up for economic justice actions or environmental justice, the richer countries just say, I'm going to cut down the cooperation I'm giving you. They threaten to remove that, or they just say, I'm going to give you more, and then they don't fulfill their agreement. But just the threat changes the position of the countries, especially the poorest ones, in the last minute. And this is a tragedy that is happening mostly to the islands. You know, the small island developing states that are having the harshest impacts of climate change. But in the negotiations, they have no leverage because they live being held hostages of the richer countries. So it's really disgusting the way that official development assistance is not enough. It's another colonial tool to hold the governments of the global south at the caprice of the richer countries, and yet they are blackmailing the countries all the time. So it's like a vicious circle, and it's very sad to watch the poorer countries under that
Yeah, it's
dynamic.
like a toxic relationship. I mean, that we can't leave. Like, oh, I'll change. I'll do this for you.
Yeah, and we have Chante Moore here saying conditional aid is neo-colonialism, and we haven't
Mhm.
talked about that conditionalities. That is, I'm gonna give you money, but you have to spend it with my companies. You have to spend it in this way around in
You
this
have to
sector of
open up for
infrastructure.
free trade so that I can flood your markets with my
Exactly.
excess carrots
It's like the
grown
giving
by
us the carrot,
agribusiness.
but it's on a stick. No, you get the carrot, but there's also a stick that I can whip you with if you don't agree with my conditions. Like what you said, no, you have to privatize those uh, companies providing basic social services. Of
Water, health,
course,
electricity, everything,
Oh
education.
yeah, and the
one.
golden public-private partnership, which again builds on this myth that private sector is efficient,
And what is
which
really
I
appalling?
think this pandemic has proved that the market cannot solve any crisis. So I really
What is
want
The
to
appalling now is
abandon
the
public-private partnership because I
exactly.
cannot.
And they also want to ram down our throats this
oh, that.
Oh,
But I
powerful
like that
again.
image, because she's talking about something very scary, and it's like, the ominous image of capitalistic powers. But
Yeah,
I want to
I
say that Chante Moore is also saying that powerful countries use it to set the agenda of policies and laws that favor multinational companies to shut down living wage demands for movements and unions, and hiring companies, taking the trash that they are releasing, destroying biodiversity, and extracting all the resources. That is an addition by Adriana Lopez. And yeah, so it's the negative impacts keep on going on, and people questions whether coloniality is current now, or they say, oh no, you're too ideologized. It's like you're
mm.
using old terms to define what is happening, and it's like,
But
can't you
just if you
see?
just think about the borders that exist today, then you know how alive colonialism and European colonialism and imperialism is. Because, every time the conversation comes around, for example, Israel Palestine. Oh, why can't the two sides sit down? And I'm just like,
It's so
do you
complex.
know
So
what
complex.
happened in 1940? Like, do you understand that? Like, what if I came to your house and I said that, okay, you can go in the storage room, I'm just giving your house.
I
And that's
know. And
literally what we're seeing right now. I just find it ridiculous, some of the comments that people make on current affairs that don't recognize the history to it, and the fact that oh, just because it happened 60, 70 years ago doesn't mean it's gone. The fact that you drew those borders and you gave that power to one group over another determines the problems we have today. It's the same thing with the ridiculousness that we're seeing now on Afghanistan, where a lot of people are just
oh
like,
gosh,
no, but what's the solution then? We have to let Afghanistan govern themselves. We can't be there forever. And I'm just like, okay, you're right that we cannot go back in time to 1979 and say, don't arm the Mujahideen. Like, that boat has sailed, but let's recognize that that's what you did. That
that's what they
this
did.
group this group is in power now because you armed them and you thought it was
Exactly.
legitimate a way of fighting the Soviet Union because that was the most
Exactly.
dangerous thing at that point in time.
Exactly. I just can't with Afghanistan. I mean, maybe we need to devote another episode just on that because there are so many things on the military complex, on the supposed 2 trillion or 3 trillion spent, and it was
Mm.
just for military corporations and contractors. Nothing went to the civil society, to the society, to the building democratic institution. Nothing. It was just for
Mhm.
their own constructors. So it's really
For
disgusting the
sure.
way in which
Afghanistan
another
is your
saying.
live example of how
Exactly.
colonialism is there today because oh, generation after generation they have been
Exactly.
betrayed by the superpowers that tries to interfere there. And
And they,
blames them that oh, all the opium is growing there. I'm just like, I'm sorry, do you know the history of opium?
and blaming the religion and the cultures as well, which is also something that is very low and very discriminatory. But I just
Yeah.
wanted also to highlight on this issue of narrative that Lenny Carrey is saying this topic is crucial because societies in the global north are always blaming the global south countries for their situation, like poverty or
Mm-hmm.
corruption. And she's thanking us for speaking with clarity and hoping that people listening to the arguments. But I just want to emphasize this because people in the global north, let us say citizens, they are now thinking, oh, thank you so much for saving us first because we are so good and kind. So now we really need the vaccines. And it's like a nationalistic that is very fascist and is building this narrative in the global north. And they think that they're fighting fascism, but actually they are acting as the Nazis themselves. But they are really wiping out the way they're analyzing with their poor elements of
Mm.
information, with the manipulation they're doing on their citizens, and really even civil society are replicating those elements by proposing conditionalities and very colonial ways of engaging in the global south. So INGOs, we've been very critical about INGOs in our territories, but sometimes all of these movements just come saying we're helping the world, we're helping the global south, and it's actually making things worse and keeping all of the funding that could really go in developing the real, let us say, the organic structures that need to be built in our countries in the global south.
Mm. Yeah, I'm thinking specifically of microcredit as you say
Oh
that.
gosh, no. Yeah.
Ah! Which
I just, yeah.
exactly, this is the solution. And like in general, women's economic entrepreneurship, that's going to save women. And I remember when Muhammad Yunus won the Nobel Prize, and specifically for all of the micro lending projects and so on. And where I was working, my boss there said that okay, let's acknowledge that we with this we are seeing one thing that hasn't happened before: women getting cash in hand, women who never had access to cash before. So yes, that changes something. But if you don't address the entire system, don't address how it works, as well as cultural gender norms, and this is what we have seen happening: women handing over money to husbands, brothers, sons, fathers, whether that's ingrained in them, or whether that's because they're being threatened by that family member and there's a pressure to do that. Like that doesn't change. And the fact that microcredit has caused so many difficulties and trapped people into poverty, and that
And that,
its interest rates are so high.
yeah, it's that.
It's shocking. It's shocking the amount of money that the institutions have been making off of poor people. Like, it's just the example of
Yeah.
how much you want to exploit poor people and continue enriching the wealthiest.
I've seen projects of micro lending that have 100% return, meaning they double the twice of the
Oh my
funding
God.
which is lending, which is odious lending, to getting the reproduction of debt now at the micro level. And I couldn't agree with Chantimur saying not only that poverty can never end without decolonializing, but actually all the efforts to poverty reduction are just capitalistic ways of from the global north to earn more. And that is something that we need to be very clear, because all of those, oh, let's fight poverty, without really addressing concentration of wealth and the colonial and imperialistic manners, we're just contributing to this situation that the world is at. So I'm just saying that Teta is getting in touch with us and saying that she doesn't have enough power to come back. So she's now following from internet on her phone. So very happy to follow the discussion with our despised girl who's out there asking why decolonization is important in a struggle for economic justice. But very happy as well that our audience is answering many of the questions we're having, because
absolutely.
I love that. And so we hear that microfinance institutions have higher interest rates than commercial banks.
They're loan sharks, just at the small level.
Almost double. It's obscene. It's just profiting from the people in the most disgusting ways, and
Absolutely.
they call that progress. They call that help.
What people should do is borrow, I don't know, $500 billion, and then you don't have to pay it back. You can just default and be.
Yeah, exactly.
That's essentially what people do on the large scale, whether that's companies that borrow money, or whether that's governments and so on and so forth. You can default on a loan if it's big enough, and it doesn't. You don't have to be personally liable to pay it back. You don't have to sell your house and give up everything. No, like isn't it ridiculous that when you steal on that level, it's fine. There's no accountability. It's very Les Miserables, right? It's you go to jail for stealing a loaf of bread. You don't go to jail for stealing everything
in the world. Yes. Exactly. I know. And then we have another argument. Then a country will report that 90% of women have access to finance, in national voluntary reports at the United Nations, which means they have been dropped and indebted in reality. And also this type of reporting, we should also talk about reporting. Countries are saying, okay, we're giving finance, climate finance, which means we are giving money to address the problem that we cause, the rich countries. And actually 70% of the funding is in debt, is in loans, so that they get to profit more from that money. So it's just really disgusting. But I'm saying that
there's a comic, Emilia, called War and Peace, and they did this panel called The Adventures of Savior Man. And the first panel is like somebody with a cape reaching out his hand and being like, let me help you. But then when you zoom out, you see that he's standing on the other guy. And that's why.
Exactly. Yes.
And the guy's just like, you could get off me, then I could get up. And then he's just like, no, take my hand, take my hand.
Oh, please share that, because it's actually the problem of people only looking at micro, local, mezzo, and it's like, oh, the problem is with my government in my small country, or corruption, and they are not seeing the bigger picture and what are all of these dynamics. And I think that is the problem of people in seeing the bigger picture is that they think that the bigger picture is about their locality or their government without taking a look at really all of the dynamics or all of the actors and processes that are happening out there. I think this is one of the efforts that the Campaign of Campaigns and the Spice Girls lives are trying to get at, that we really need to talk global to address the problems of the local level.
Yeah. And I think, the history of this is so alive today, especially also when you look at indigenous communities, because, people think that, people think that, oh, it's in the past. It's not, right? As many land
No,
acknowledgements as you do, you're not actually changing your government to include indigenous people in the decision making. You're not listen. For example, in Canada, they had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that made 93 recommendations to implement. They were not implemented, and one of those recommendations was to do with these residential schools, which, by the
yeah,
way,
oh god, scandalous.
it only closed in the 90s, so it's not as far away as you
Yesterday,
think.
yeah, no,
Colonialism has been
now,
happening to people who are alive today, whose
now,
families have been through this trauma, who are living
yeah,
with this trauma.
yeah,
So
yeah,
if you're going to talk about, for example, justice for indigenous communities, having their land back, not having mega projects taking away not just their land, but destroying the natural resources that they are living on, or even saving the planet because they are custodians of more than 80% of our
exactly,
forests. Like,
yeah,
this is something that when we talk about climate justice, when we talk about economic justice, it's very glaring when you think
yeah,
about that, the fact that the justice aspect is still something that has not been addressed for indigenous
yeah,
communities around the world, and the trauma is continuing. Right, in my country,
yeah.
in Bangladesh, they're building a Marriott hotel, for example, in the Merle
Oh
community
no,
right now. Right? Yes, please call out the Marriott and other hotels who think that
oh
it's a good
god.
idea, because it's going to give jobs. Amelia, did you not know
Oh
that
yeah, yeah,
indigenous
yeah. So
people need
important
jobs?
jobs. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the contribution they're making. I just love
yeah.
the proposal that all of the reporting to the UN, in the case, for instance, on access to finance for women, is that the voluntary national report should read that 90% of women have been indebted.
I know, it's
Can
a
you
very good
imagine that
point.
kind of reporting? That is a great idea. You know that civil society really turns it up. And what is the translation to actual effects on population rather than the capitalistic discourse is having? It would read so much so different. But let me
Yeah, and
say that we are eight.
even if we did a report that said that women are generating this much wealth by just taking care of you and feeding you.
Exactly, exactly. We should shift the logic of the report. I just want to point out we are 8 minutes before closing, and we have a gift for the audience today. So sad that Rina and Tete are not here. Rina's having problems, and Tete had a power outage. But we have a gift for you because we're always trying to have an art segment here, and given that we had all of these challenges in meeting together, we got together and edited the video because as of now, we're starting a new segment, which is an interpretative dance of official discourses. So without much
Artivism.
further ado, I don't know, Sanam, do you want to give the introduction to the piece of art that we're going to present now? No,
You do it.
okay. Adrian, no, just I think what we wanted to do is really to start exposing what the official discourses are, and how activists really hear those discourses. So Adriana, let's just roll it in
This
and
is an
present the.
epic policy test, but ultimately, this is a moral test. The trillions of dollars needed for COVID recovery is money that we are borrowing from future generations, every last penny. And we cannot use those resources to lock in policies that burden them with a mountain of debt on a broken planet.
Yeah. That's it. let me say, this is the speech of the State of the Planet by Guterres last December. And what we are trying to do is just, we hear all of those talking, and what we are really wanted to say is to translate what is our reading of the discourses, which is just sheer noise in the background, and whilst there are really things that are needed to happen in the real world. So every episode from now on will have a segment of activism, and hopefully we will dance to the discourses of Trump, Bolsonaro, and whomever we can find out there. I'll make something out of it, because really it's useless. We needed to make some useful out some use out of those discourses, because otherwise they're used for nothing, right? They're just words, and the world is keep on being destroyed. So at least we're going to use them as material for activism, and we're just gonna cut them into pieces and use them for something that is really at least meaningful for us and our audience. So with all of the love from us to the audience, there is our activism for the day.
I can't wait for more.
Yeah, so thank you. I mean, we have 5 minutes before closing. Is there anything else you want to share us to the audience before we close up?
I guess, if you're thinking about how does this apply to like everyday life, and I was thinking about this before we started this episode, and I thought to myself, a lot of the time you have to question certain narratives. Like when they say that it's a European refugee crisis, is it? Or is it that the Europeans have been selling a lot of weapons to a lot of different groups and dropping a lot of bombs? How is it the refugee crisis is because you're in the territory of Europe? Like these are the questions that you have to ask yourself. And then as soon as you ask, you see that there is an imperialist framing, and that there is a history to it, as we said, from Afghanistan, from Israel. But like even simple things, that what is a banana? Is it a yellow curved thing? You know that there are actually many types of bananas, and some of them are squat, and some of them are short, and some of them are purple, and some of them have these dark seeds and red seeds and so on. Actually, a banana is many different things, but because of the power of the trade system, because of this control over our food systems and import and export, a banana has been defined in a certain way, right down to the emoji that you have on your phone for a banana. And you can extrapolate this not just to these objects, but like, who is the hero? Is the hero somebody, in Rambo, for example, the hero is working with the Mujahideen / Taliban and thanks them at the end, by the way. Who is the hero saving the day? Whether you're talking about a war or a country, or you're talking about a company, or you're talking about a local community, who is being put forward as the hero, and then you have to question that.
Exactly.
Because ultimately, what we know from our movements and our work is that we don't work in this type of centralized one leader. This is much more guerrilla, right? We share our power. We work together. We have a common cause. And that's the story that we often don't see, especially in the corporate-owned media. So when you start asking these questions, you see that not only is colonialism alive and well, and imperialist motives are strong, very strong, to the point that they're not going to stop having soldiers. Yeah, they're not going to stop having soldiers in a certain state. They're not going to give up French Polynesia. They're not going to give up British Virgin Islands. They're not going to let Hawaii, for example, leave the United States, right? That's a movement. There are many grassroots movements, and once you ask those questions, you start to see that more, and you realize that the economic justice part and addressing colonialism, addressing imperialism, absolutely ties together.
Yeah, and I mean, we barely have the time to discuss what is our decolonial dream, but we really needed to lay down the foundation for saying what is colonial. I just wanted to emphasize that the last comments of the audience, like we should dance to CSW's dream
Yes.
agreed conclusion next year. Let's do that. Let's organize that. And yeah, the dimension of all of these activisms on the grounds, and we are hearing by Mati guerrilla girls. There are many
The first
ways
single
with
of the Despised Girls.
yes, we already have our new album. But very sad to see that we're coming to an end of our episode. I mean, it was very bumpy on the road, but it was such a great surprising you here, Sanam, and having you here with us. And this is not going to be the last one. We promise we need you here. We need your powerful voice and your art. So let's have it here. And next time you will tell us more about how your projects are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. What's our farewell? El Puebla, unida.
Jamás será
Será vencido.
vencido. Goodbye, dear audience. Ciao.